Good morning again, and welcome to Table Talk with Brenda Perryman. I'm Brenda Perryman, and I must apologize for that segment on food allergies. For some reason, the sound didn't come right when it was rendered to a DVD. So the people on that end have to work on that. And now, I'd like to introduce, or have them introduce themselves, our Table Talk co hosts. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. I'm Darren Calhoun, Supervisory Investigator with the EEOC.
Good morning. My name is Robert Thomas. I'm the Vice Chairman of the City of Detroit Board of Zoning Appeals.
And I'm Chris Summerall, servant of the citizens of the city of Detroit.
Public servant, right?
Yeah, amongst
Okay, you
My
said
bad.
servant. Yeah,
I am a
that's
servant at your service.
public servant. Okay, on this day by Ken Coleman, on this day in African American life in the city of Detroit, on this day, August 29th, oh, that's one of my anniversaries. In 1896, Harold E. Bledsoe was born in Marshall, Texas. He will serve in the U.S. Army during World War I and become a leading lawyer in Detroit. In 1934, Bledsoe will become the first black lawyer appointed to the state attorney general's legal staff. In 1954, Bledsoe will be elected president of the National Bar Association. He will later be elected as a delegate to the Michigan Constitutional Convention of 1961 and 62. Known as Mr. Black Democrat and father of the black lawyer, Bledsoe will join the ancestors at the age of 77 on March 26, 1974. His daughter, Geraldine, will become the first African American woman elected to Recorder's Court in 1966 and the first black woman in the United States to be elected to a judgeship without having been appointed first. And, you know, she was something. The guys used to call her Mean Geraldine, but she was good. And I had the opportunity about 10 years ago to meet her at the fish market. I was at the fish market. She was coming out the fish market. We stood and talked for about an hour. Just a wonderful, wonderful woman. Really, a historic woman. Now, I want to mention this other happening. In 1983, Mayor Coleman A. Young issues Executive Order 22. The directive is designed to increase local and minority participation in construction and contracting projects that involve local taxpayer dollars. And I think we're still dealing with that too, because we want to make sure that the contractors are too indicative of the community also. Isn't that right?
Yes.
Okay, so we have a decent amount of topics. Some of them are, a lot of them are our opinions, of course, but the other day they talked about on television that this American jihadist, Douglas McCain, he was a black man. He was killed. He was fighting with ISIS. And this article that we were reading deals with the fact that if you feel like you're a loser, you can always go over to the other countries who are fighting against us and become a winner. Did any of you read that, and what did you think?
Well, I read it, and I don't know, it was a little bit crazy. There was a couple of things going on with this character. I mean, he was 33. I saw in an article they kept calling him an adolescent for some reason, as if he was younger, like a young person. But he made a conscious choice and decision to go fight for another, not country, but another organization, and he ultimately became a loser. Regardless, if he was a loser in this country, he went over to overseas and became a loser in the fact that he lost his life at the young, tender age of 33.
And his best friend, he had a best friend, Troy Castigar. They went to school together. I believe Troy was either white or Arabic or something. And they went to high school together. They were great friends. And Troy lost he was killed.
What was interesting is that he lost his life, but it was interesting to see that McCain's father left him at an early age, and Castigar was the major influence at that point in time on his life, and that peer influence really took him away from the family and ultimately went overseas.
Well, I mean, I think we only know about this guy's life because he did something infamous, which is to go and fight for a very bad cause. I'm not necessarily
But they
sure.
say they have over 100 people over there who are
Right,
Americans.
and I'm not necessarily sure, and I get the tone of the article, why he would be considered a loser, but maybe he had an epiphany and decided that this was his crowning moment. I don't know.
Well, he converted to Islam.
Exactly. So in his reading of Islam, and I would hate for us to say that, you know, this guy just didn't have anything. He did not have what was going for him here in the United States, and maybe he thought, because there are Marines, Air Force. I was in the Army at one time in my life, and I thought I was doing the right thing. I'm not going to go cut anyone's head off, and I'm not going to go do the things that ISIS is doing. But I thought I was doing the right thing, and I believe that I was doing the right thing. He may not have had direction. He may not have had the correct direction in his life.
And I think too that individuals don't always identify with the culture in the United States. Just because you're born here doesn't necessarily mean that that automatically you're going to identify with the agenda or the culture over here. So he may have found more of an identity
Found it a home
over
right.
there, although it ended up costing him dearly. You know, he may have found that identity over in that type of situation over there.
Well, I think it was with extremist Muslims, not just because the religion doesn't tell you to do
Right.
some of these things. These were extremists. And he wasn't always like that, but I think that helped.
But isn't that the same way with the gangs? The gangs here in the United States, here in the city of Detroit. I mean, they find a home because these are people who are allowing them to do whatever they want to do. You know, and they identify with, you know,
I would
the
say-
system is not helping you out.
I would add on to that. I mean, we talk about this just about every segment on Brenda Pyramids of the Table Talk. The fact that, you know, a lot of these guys don't have mentors, don't have that
exactly.
father figure. He was clearly trying to attach himself to some
Something.
type of entity of, you know, of higher being. He didn't have his dad anymore. That was his major influence in life, and, you know, his dad was pouring into him, and now he attached himself to something very bad and ended up losing his life over it.
Because he started with the G mob and the mob and all that stuff.
And the thing is, we don't know what exactly was going through his head, but we know that there had to be some type of indicators along the way. That maybe he was a loner, maybe he was reclusive, maybe he wasn't as social as you would expect a young man to be. And that could have led him to seek identification somewhere else. We know that he started following these different extremists through Twitter. Mm-hmm. You know, was anyone monitoring that? Was anyone, you know, just close enough to him to notice, you know, hey, I see you're following some extremists on Twitter, you know, and having that conversation. And so it's really, did anyone take enough interest in him to even see?
Well, his father died. His father died. And I think they said he was just a regular kid growing up, but a regular kid who apparently didn't finish high school. So he had to find, when you don't finish school, it limits some of your possibilities. And so you start maybe hanging with other people who have the same possibilities as you do.
Yeah, your confidence is shaking. And you look to identify yourself outside of what is traditionally deemed successful or the right path. So by not finishing high school, other different things that are natural progression for a young man, he may have felt the need to identify totally opposite of someone else, to be that oddball, to be that extremist even. And so unfortunately we're seeing this more common. You know, even in our country, we see individuals who attach themselves to extremist groups like the Ku Klux Klan. And, you know, some of the same indicators, their enrollees follow the story of McCain and Troy. So we see it domestically and also
But did anyone find it strange that here's somebody who's not necessarily successful was traveling to Kenya, to Somalia, I mean, Somalia. How did
he get the
it
money?
cost $1,500
I
to
know,
get to
I know.
Africa. I mean, there are. I was a part of a group that was trying to save to go to Africa, and it was a $1,500 trip.
Yeah.
And I, I'm not
You still here?
successful, but I'm not.
I would add that what bothers me is that in the article they state there's over 100 other kids like him. Well, not kids because he's a full
Grown
adult,
man,
but
right.
people like him, and they're surprised that he went overseas to do what he did versus staying in the United States. And this is something to, it's an eyebrow raiser
Yeah.
that we do have
Because there might be pockets here.
sales
That's
here.
Right.
exactly what I was thinking about. I said, gee, these are the same people who may get on the airplane with us, who may be at a concert at the arenas with us. This may be the same group, and these are homegrown terrorists. Yeah, that's scary.
Yeah.
That's really, really scary. And that's something that I guess our authorities have to be on their toes about.
A little bit more vigilant.
More vigilant. Gee, and I don't mind. Search me. Check me out. But they're building so many things like plastic this, plastic guns, and things like that that can't be detected. So, well, let's go on. Speaking of guns, that 9-year-old shot her instructor with a Uzi. She was at the shooting range with an Uzi. What did you all think about that?
Ridiculous.
It's absolutely ridiculous.
It's horrific. Number one, I live in an urban community. I've never lived in any rural areas where you probably will find your typical kid out there shooting on a range, but they don't shoot Uzis. They shoot shotguns or maybe a handgun once or twice, but not here in the urban area. It's something that we're not familiar with, and we don't do that type of stuff. We don't see kids out there shooting any type of guns. At least we don't encourage that. But they encourage the kid from New Jersey, a 9-year-old, to go out there and go on a shooting range with a Uzi. It's unheard of.
It brings up a thought in my mind how the country that we live in, the United States, there's a large faction that is just enamored with firearms. I mean, from their ability or their desire to have any type, as extreme as they may be. If individuals could have a tank, and I'm sure some of them do, they'd have that firearm on their person. An Uzi on a 9-year-old girl shooting an Uzi.
Did you
Why? Why?
Well, did you see the video? There's video to it.
I saw the video, and they stopped it
right at this point. And,
Right.
and it's because a child she's a baby.
But
and
why?
Exactly. That's my
understand.
point. I mean, it's a shooting range, but why would you're asking a great question. I have 2 daughters of my own. I would never put an Uzi in the hand of my daughters were little when they were 9. I mean, they were very small when they were 9. There is no way in the world I would put a handgun in their hand, much less an Uzi that has more power
Why
than
is it legal for? Why are Uzis legal? To that's where I'm getting at. Why does the average person need an Uzi?
Well, there's no ban on those
there's
automatic
no ban on any
Especially
automatic
in the
weapons.
state of
Bush
Nevada.
15 and all those Bushmen.
But the problem is, and because of what the folks in the rural communities do, I mean, it's something they do. They it's one of their fun outings with their kids, whatnot. But anytime you put a semi-automatic or automatic weapon in a kid's hand and the power behind
The
it
power.
with the recoil, they cannot control that. Period. They cannot control a Uzi, a AK-47. They can't control that type of stuff.
And don't know how to pull their hand off the trigger, their finger off the trigger.
I'm not a parent, but speaking to individuals on our panel who are parents, what possibly could a parent be offering their 9-year-old child as far as sensation, education? What could a child get from firing an Uzi at a gun range?
Well, one thing, when you give your children things or expose them to certain things, these are things that you want them to be exposed to for the rest of their lives. The fact that I did not even buy my son a cap gun, a water gun, or anything, that meant I didn't want him to be exposed to weapons. I mean, I think as parents, we expose them to what they need to know, or we think they need to know, and these parents could have been zealots.
Well, and even to a lesser point, you're absolutely right. But to a lesser point, when I first bought a firearm, I took my youngest son, and I said, "Come in the room. I'm going to show you something, and I want you to touch it." I obviously unloaded it, but I want you to touch it, and because one of the things that you do with kids is you take away that mystery. Once you take away that mystery, there's no need for them to go into your room to say, "Hey, guess what? My dad has this." I explained to him what firearms are. I explained to him how they hurt. I educated him on the dangers of firearms, so he doesn't have that mystery as a child. Now, he's 18 and he doesn't have a need for it or even a want to do it. Now, what they said here is that this child was very familiar with weapons. I can't imagine a 9-year-old. My son wasn't 9 when I told him these things, but I can't imagine a 9-year-old. I mean, it's not even just the knowledge of the weapons in the house or the firearms in the house, but putting that type of power into a hand of a child. When I was in the Army, the rifle recoiled me, and I was a grown man. I can't imagine the powerlessness.
Still, with so many adults, they have gun accidents all the time.
So you put that
because they don't know. It goes back and so.
You know what? I feel personally that the parents need to be prosecuted, because even on a much smaller scale, or you can't leave a child for 10 minutes in the parking lot, running in and out of Blockbuster or get Redbox or whatever. That's illegal. If a child gets a hold of an alcoholic beverage, parents are investigated. I think these parents need to be held accountable for putting their
it
child.
wasn't
It
illegal.
wasn't illegal,
It
and it was
wasn't
at a
illegal.
gun range with the instructor right
I
there.
understand.
A licensed instructor. He should have said something
Absolutely.
like, you know what, this child is too small.
Yeah, but
You can't get on a roller coaster if you're so tall.
So then I guess I'm speaking to the legality or what in principle the United States deems legal and illegal. Not in principle, actually
Illegal.
legal or illegal. And so this is nonsense.
Well, they're not going to prosecute
They're not
the
gonna prosecute.
parents.
You know why?
And this
Because
morning,
these gun groups.
yes. Oh, yes.
it's not just the
Well,
gun
we
groups.
know that.
Yeah,
because
But
it's
what I
right or
was
wrong.
going to say this morning, the parents of the family of the instructor was on television, and they were saying they'd like to talk to the young lady because they knew it was an accident and they don't want her to be traumatized. I was like, oh my gosh, it's the gun culture. This country has a gun culture.
An absolute gun
violence
culture
culture.
that started with the Second Amendment. I mean, and it didn't mean that everybody can walk around in the OK
Thank
Corral.
you.
It meant
Thank
that you can protect yourself, but or well-armed militia if you actually read the whole thing. And the problem is that we've taken it to the NRA nth degree. And now anybody at any age should be able to carry any weapon because one
Sentence.
one period of a gun control and the amount of money that they have will just
And it's big
sends the
business.
NRA way out. Exactly, it's huge business. Who makes Uzis and why do they make them? Who makes those kind of weapons? And why are they?
It's
and
an
they're-
Israeli gun.
and they're landing in the streets. They're not at just gun ranges.
They're in the street.
Uzis are in the streets. They're killing our kids. So and I feel bad for this young lady, this little girl, and her family because she's killed somebody, and at 9 years old, she's taken a life. But I also feel bad for those people downtown Detroit, and Canton, and everywhere else where these assault weapons and assault rifles are being sold and then get into the hands of people who don't mean any good.
I would be interested to see the statistics on how many times domestically an Uzi has saved a life versus taken a life. The risk versus reward, it just doesn't make sense. It doesn't add up. And I know there's the right of individuals to bear arms, but the government has the right and the responsibility to look out, for the commonwealth, overall wealth of the individuals who are citizens.
Yeah, but the United States President, President Obama, attempted to restrict the gun rights of owners, period.
Oh, my goodness.
And folks are selling guns, but it didn't pass within Congress. So you at a stalemate right now. You can't do anything unless the laws actually pass.
And background checks and
Yeah.
so much.
And an age limit, an age cutoff.
Well, this is going to really
for that
spark
range,
some serious alarm right now with the conversation.
At least for that range, I mean, that'll
For a bare
start-
minimum, the age limit for certain types of guns, because I'm telling you, the folks is really avid gun owners going to
They're
fight
gonna
back on that.
Yeah.
I understand that.
But particularly for age limits on particular types of guns, it needs to be banned. Period. Automatic, semi-automatic guns.
Oh, as soon
no
as you
way
say
it
banned,
keeps
and
going.
they're
It's-
setting off
I think
buzzwords
it's really,
right now
really
for.
a sensitive topic when they talk about the African American community.
Oh,
because
absolutely.
we're because we're in an urban setting, you're used to either hearing guns or seeing guns, but the folks in the other communities aren't, and they're used to just spraying their guns wherever they want, in the forest, in the trees or whatnot.
Yep.
I've seen more guns
At
in the
animals.
country than I have people, you walk in people houses, there's people that I do business with, and they proudly announce their arsenal. Oh yeah, we've got the AR-15 and this and that, and you're looking like, just give me my cards and I'll leave it.
I'm
So
outta here.
it's entrenched in culture how there not only is the right to bear arms, but it's the love of it. The love
Well,
of it.
speaking of arms, speaking of the country, Ferguson, Missouri. The National Guard has left. They had everybody there. They had the militarized vehicles there. And, the police department had the militarized vehicles, and then the National Guard came. And they buried Michael Brown, I think it was
Monday.
Monday, yes. Now they have to wait. They say it'll be until October when they decide whether or not they're going to file charges against this police officer.
Yeah, their grand jury only meets like once a month. So, or it's not they don't meet and continue to meet and hear evidence until it's over. So that's what accounts for that period of time. I just thank God that unrest is over, and now you can start not only healing but fixing that society, fixing that part of the community.
Well,
that
it's
part of
brought a
Missouri.
lot of attention to these killings that police have been perpetrating,
Right.
and getting away with it. That's the other thing. What I just didn't like about that whole situation was the fact that did they take the policeman's clothes off? Did they get his clothes? Did they do all the things they were supposed to do? So much time has gone under the bridge. And the police chief right away was trying to make excuses. It just was a horrible situation.
I feel like there's that nervousness of waiting through a trial that's coming again. We experienced this in the Trayvon scenario, and we're going to go through it again as a community, as a nation, to watch what many of us would perceive as cut and dry. We're going to see the justice system on trial as to whether or not what most people feel is morally right is upheld in the court system, or is this another scenario of a young black man's life not having the same value as other lives in this country. So I think that this is we haven't seen potentially the biggest eruption yet, especially on the tail end of Trayvon. I think that potentially there could be some things that, there needs to be continual dialogue in that community. I don't think just because the National Guard leaves and, things seemingly get back to normal, I think that things are still volatile. They're just kind of simmering right now.
It's not uncommon that charges be brought, a month or so later. Look at the Renisha McBride situation, in which, of course, our county prosecutor is a little bit more trustworthy than we would think, because we know, we see her all the time.
We've seen her track record.
Yeah,
too.
and we're not sure, about in Florida or Missouri, but they're taking their time with it. they're making sure they want to get it right, all of the charges right, that they can, trump up against this character. But hopefully it's taken care of, and they're prosecuted the right way. So.
Well, what got me was I got an email the other day. I started to print it off. A fundraiser for this guy,
Yeah.
this guy who, the police officer.
He's up to
Named
500,000.
Darren- Yeah, Darren Wilson, Darren something. And I got an email. I said, why would I get this to give? Let's save Darren.
Right, well-
it's crazy.
And there's
It's
always
not
gonna
me.
Be, yeah, there's always going to be sympathizers to even the most wanton or obvious, of scenarios. And so that doesn't surprise me. What surprises me is how, after so many years of fighting for equality or trying to get this country more homogenous, it appears as if these extremists are gaining more and more momentum now.
They
And have
they
the
are.
platforms
It
to
started in
speak,
2008.
whether it be for Fox News or we know what's the I've deleted his name from my memory. The
Rush
fat guy.
Limbaugh?
Yeah.
Limbaugh.
Yeah.
Well, the thing is this, that there are so many groups, right away, Fox News and others come out against the victim, always. And so they start spewing that right away. Well, this guy had this guy has that. They always put the victim on sale, not on sale, on trial first, so that to skew the minds of potential jurors, the public, and so forth.
Well, they feed into the stereotype of young African American male.
So he must have been
The
violent.
stereotype is always perpetrated on television, within the crime, stuff like that. Instead of, their nieces and nephews is personally doing wrong.
Right.
They want to attack, the victim.
Right.
He was smoking marijuana. Well, a lot of kids
You-
at that age smoke marijuana. They didn't go through the whole tape that we all saw, with the kid actually purchasing the box of cigars that he can afford. He put the other ones back. His buddy put the other ones back, and they didn't go through the whole scenario. They want to read what they want to read. Look at the guy stealing the cigars, and the owner coming up to him, or the
Manager.
the manager
And-
coming
and-
up to him, and who's gonna take some guy coming in his face the way he did? No,
and
hold back.
and even if even in no stretch of the imagination could the even stealing a cigar with the police standing there, there's no stretch of the imagination that could be a death sentence,
Yeah.
a
But-
capital
No.
crime.
But
Well,
definitely-
You know.
it's not for most people, but it is, I feel when I look at my black men, many times I feel they're walking around with a target on their back. And as I'm not a black man, I'm a woman, but I have, grandsons, sons, I have friends, everything that I love. And just to think that they don't even have to open their mouths and they may be a victim just really gets me. Well, we got to get to some.
And I'll just say to that, and I know you want to get. Imagine how it is on this side.
Yeah, I
you
can
know,
imagine
living life
like that.
with that target, and that target is there.
Okay. In fact, I was talking to my son-in-law yesterday, and I said, "God, you got to have this talk with my grandson," and he said, he's just going to tell him, "Son, you just can't win. Just put your hands on this and do this. Be courteous." That's whatever he could do. All right, Mayor Duggan wants developers of the Brewster Wheeler Recreation Center near the old Brewster Projects to do something to honor its history. And that's very important. I was kind of impressed with that because this is a building that I don't think Dan Gilbert's bought yet.
Not yet.
And it will honor some of the history. We need to honor the history of Detroit because Joe Louis trained there.
And not only that, Detroit is rich in history, and that area specifically was a hub for talent in Detroit's heyday. We're all excited about the new energy, the new excitement that folks have with Detroit, but I think we would be doing ourselves a disservice if we neglect it as the Table Talk does before every segment, we acknowledge the history of Detroit by a segment on this day, book by Ken Coleman, what features history in Detroit. And I think that it is something that can help identify the future of Detroit by appreciating the past.
I'll tell you one thing. It's a great political move by Eric
Yeah,
Duggan
yeah, it is.
Tremendously.
to include the Brewster projects in the history, like you said before, the rich history come out of it, especially with a lot of the Motown stars.
And
came out of that area.
Smokey Robinson,
or
Diana
Ross
Ross.
singing that area.
Supreme, yeah.
But
Yes.
the people who practice
Maybe
in
if
that
I would have
area,
grown up there, I would have sang better.
I think you sing
in that era,
Yeah. Well, they were
In that
older
era.
than me, but still, just being there.
but it was a great political move by Duggan. I'm pretty sure some people was in his ear on
Yeah, oh,
coming
I'm
off the edges
sure.
of a couple of political misfires when
Yeah,
it comes to
the
PR
water
work
and
being
the
done by the city of Detroit with the water situation. This is a great one. This is a great, tremendous one. It'll go down with his name being a part of that project, and how serious he is looking for big time developers to actually develop that area.
Right.
We'll see.
That's what I was just going to ask. What to do what with it? I mean, to honor the history of it. I don't know if we have a gym anymore.
Still fix the building, because the building was once a library, and then it became this gym. And just like, say for example, Nordstrom's may be the anchor store of Somerset North. It may be the anchor store. They want this to be an anchor to build things around.
Right,
them.
and that's what I think is
That's important.
what's more important is the development of that area and the development of that building. Now there was a time, and I was trying to get on the whatever to do this. There was a time when the city was offering buildings like that, rec centers, for $1, and you go in and you have to build them up and make them places for the community. And I was a part of a church that we were trying to get that, and then everything, kind of the bottom dropped out of everything in the city of Detroit, so we weren't able to do that. But what we were going to do was to develop another community center, or a community center for for kids to go to after school and go to learn things like performing arts, and imagine if all that talent came out of the Brewsters without a center of performing arts. Imagine what would happen if they purposely
Yeah.
put in that area, in that section of town, a place for performing arts for kids in Detroit and young people in Detroit to go learn performing arts, acting,
Or people,
poetry, and singing.
music and so forth. Well, let's look at the 17-year minimum sentences sought for Theodore Wafer, who was convicted of killing Renisha McBride. Do you think that's too little or too much, or what?
I personally would think how long do we expect her to live? What's her life expectancy? And you add that to the minimum sentence, and then that's what you get.
And I feel similar to you, Darren, but I think that when you look at sentences and you base it off of sentences in similar situations, I think that, obviously if that was someone that was part of my family, I would say no, it should be life, so forth.
Throw
and
the
so
key
on.
away.
So throw the key away. But I think under these circumstances where it wasn't premeditated or anything like that, I think that this is about what you would expect to get.
He got found for murder.
No, he did get found, and then there's a lot of people that get convicted of murder and don't get life.
Right.
So-
So when you say him not premeditated, he opened the door and stuck a gun out.
I understand
but
that, but the definition of
It's what
premeditated-
he
was
charged
second
with. I'm
degree.
not for sure what in totality he was charged with, and then I'm not sure what the jury actually rested on as with him being accountable for. So I think 17 years. I'm happy he was convicted. It was definitely something that he deserved, looking at the evidence of what actually happened. So 17 years he's going to get, and
But I understand, Darren, where you are, because we come off the heels of former Mayor Kilpatrick receiving so many years for
28 years
for
for
corruption,
bilking
which
corruption,
no one
right.
that we know of died in connection to his story, but someone
Wow.
here, a young woman's life was
That's-
lost.
And I want to add that 15 years is the mandatory minimum that he's going to serve.
Yeah.
And
then
2
there's
years.
2 years.
Two more
For
deals for
unlawful
unlawful
gun possession.
gun possession. So, hey, he has that 17, and with Kilpatrick, it was a different situation. Now he had opportunity to settle on a couple of years, and he opted not to. So,
Well, I'm moving a little fast because we have 2 more articles, and then I thought about something that I wanted to add on about the NFL, their new ruling. And then, of course, Chris, I want him to tell people about his event tomorrow, or Engine 40's event. So I read this by Nicholas Kristof. Is everyone a little bit racist? And it deals with the fact that how blacks are just treated differently. People say they're not racist, but it says, but evidence shows that young black men in America suffer from widespread racism and stereotyping by all society, including African Americans themselves.
I would add, especially by African Americans. So.
I think that a slight tweak. I don't think everyone is a little bit racist. I think everyone may be a little bit prejudiced, and I think that subtle difference can really be a little bit more indicative of the truth. I
I'll
don't look
agree
at
to
another
disagree
race
with
as
you.
a whole and say this about that race, but if there's certain characteristics about a person, and race could be part of the composite but not of the absolute,
Well-
then yeah.
Well, I
Well-
think if you look at the way that we use racist and racism in this country, it's really based on someone who has the power to affect someone else's community. So I think that's where Chris is coming
Yeah.
from, and
But
can
it
affect
is,
their. But is it prejudiced? Is
I
everyone a
know
little
people
bit?
who say, I hate black people, and they're black.
And they're black, and that's not racist because they can hate them, but they have no power to do anything.
Well, they have no power.
So
but they,
and they're
Tyrone
least, and
Jacobs.
what did you say?
There was a skit on Dave Chappelle about a blind black man. Who
Oh,
joined
yeah,
KKK. Tyrone
yeah.
Biggums.
But
so as
go
far as is everyone a little bit prejudiced? Absolutely. I mean, I think so. I think we look at things
think
based
so,
on
too.
race.
I kind of disagree with this whole article. It was feeding into what it does is it doesn't get to the root of the problem, and which is stereotypes of African American males. And then it says, is everybody a racist? It doesn't mean it didn't mention anything about being racist towards whites or any other race out there. This was something specifically for African Americans. Is every African American or
I
everybody
know what
else?
I know what you're
I mean,
saying.
come on.
And it was geared more, but it's something to think about because even the names, some black people's names indicate they may be black on their resume, and people have tossed them to the side. I remember, okay, this is bad. Confession. My son's name is Ryan Alexander Perryman. I put that there because I said it'll look good on a door. It was easy. It wasn't, you couldn't nick the name. I had thoughts about that, actual thoughts. And then there's some people, I've had students whose names were DeQuinder, Sedan, and everything. These are, all kind of Remy, who were black, and a lot of times, and sometimes it was worse, as a
Cavassier.
teacher, they didn't even spell the name right. The parents didn't. And that was just so you end up right away pronouncing the name wrong.
Are we perpetuating the stereotype though by doing things like that? Are we feeding into that? I mean, I know there's a certain uniqueness within the African American community that when people spell their names the way that the parent want to spell a name the way they want to spell it.
Yeah.
The whatever.
Whatever.
Instead of the
Deontay.
common way, they use it with a U or an A and an N and an
My
E.
daughter's name is not spelled the traditional way. Her name's Courtney, but instead of EY at the end, it's EE.
But could possibly any of that have anything to do with us not having ties to our original names? Could possibly there be something subconsciously?
Kunta?
Jesus.
I wouldn't say that.
Well, I think that an
Just say
identity
Kunta, didn't
is especially in the United States, for African Americans, has always kind of been sought after.
Well,
Whether
I
it
think
be
you
who
should
we call ourselves black.
name anybody. If I had to do it over, I'd name them anything I wanted to name them.
Yeah, that's
You
my
know.
point. I don't think when a person have a kid, they say, "Hey, I don't have a
No,
heritage."
I don't
so
think that's
let me
either.
let me go throw something in their hat and pull it out. They just want to express their love, their particular way by naming them their unique type
and
of way.
and other types of, I mean, other cultures have naming ceremonies.
Ceremonies, yes.
And 8 days after the child is
And where do
born.
those? How long have
And
those
it's based on
ceremonies?
tradition.
It's based
But-
on their
tra-
tradition, and
tradition
those names
that has-
come from those traditions. You're right, but we have a rich tradition here in the United States, and regardless of how we got
With
here.
regard to names, no.
Well, I mean,
No.
I'm
Our
not
names are
necessarily
adopted from
sure.
our-
Well, I tell you what, it becomes a
Our
tradition right
slave
now.
o-
It does, and even starting with my dad, all of his sons' names start with D, and they're a variation of Daniel, and that's a tradition. My son's name starts with a D. My brother's name starts with a D. We're starting these traditions, but
Yeah.
and I agree that the person's name shouldn't stop them. Kalinda shouldn't stop that person from getting a job. It's this stereotyping in this country, and it's are we making it worse? I think so. I think so, because we all have our own prejudices.
What I'm saying is that in other cultures, races, the name affects the entire family, and so there's an expectation of what a name should be.
And you're absolutely
in the
right.
black community, whatever you want to name it.
That's
And in other
I don't
communities,
necessarily. It's not. I don't
that
think it's
way.
the community. I think it's that person,
I
because
think it is
because we're not a
communities,
monolithic community.
But as the community has an influence on that individual. So if a white mother chose to name her child Ray Ray, then that
Shanae.
entire community is gonna have something to say about it. But in our community, it's
Yeah,
like,
they're
oh,
gonna say, they're gonna have to say, they're gonna have to say, Ray
yes,
Ray.
it is true.
It's not true.
Yes,
They're not
it's
gonna-
true.
they're not
Her
gonna-
granddad or her father will be like,
not true.
why'd you name that boy
I live in
that?
the South. I know
I
white
did
people
too.
named
I
Ray Ray.
lived in Tennessee too for 6 years.
But I know kids named Ray Ray there.
But what I'm saying, we're talking about a composite. We're not talking about an individual
And the community
circumstance.
had nothing to do with that kid.
Well, I can bet you what it reflected.
All
the
right,
community
well, we're
reflected.
going to tie this subject up and go to the next one. And we can come back to that another time, because that's going to be a never-ending thought. But I think we could take from what all of us have thought about it is the names, and that there are certain
It's a
things people are
stereotype.
just, some people won't deal with black businesses
Yeah.
and everything. There's a lot of things.
Yeah, because
All
Crick
ri-
Crick don't.
All right, let's look real quick at those barbershops. The Social Club is one that's downtown. Have you?
It's my barber.
Yeah, his wife is one of my former students,
Yeah,
Gabby.
Sebastian Jackson.
Yeah,
my barber.
Gabrielle. She was one of my
And
students.
this is chic. It's an upscale barber shop. We have the Common Talk, and they cut all types of hair. They don't cut just African American hair, although predominantly African Americans go in there. And I'm not sure about, I know that this is his theme, but I've seen people, all types of folks, educated
Right.
and uneducated, go to his barber shop.
Right, and the thing about it, last night they had a talking session.
It's a commercial.
Last night, and I really plan to go visit, maybe do a little show from there and so forth, and maybe get them to cut my hair. But I just think it's really interesting. I think it's nice. Here, Toronto-based Taylor and Coat Barbers, they're going to start building. There's another one I heard about. They've been mostly in the suburbs, but they're coming to Detroit.
I can tell you something about the Social Club. Is he's an young African American male in his early 30s,
Right.
entrepreneur, and then he does some other unique things with the hair. That it's a great barbershop.
I plan to go.
Detroit has a rich
I-
history of being a hair capital of the world. So, way to take
So
it
the
up
hair
there.
shows.
Okay, this
Or take it down.
caregiver, this caregiver, she's secretly wed a Waterford man. We only have like a minute and a half to talk about that. But he was in his 80s, she was 35, and she got him to marry her, and she, well, of course, depleted the money, and she had not had a background check. And they are saying that so many of these home care agencies do not do background checks. Did you get a chance to read?
Yeah, I think there's a special section of hell for people who prey on the elderly and the children. I just
Right.
happen to believe that. I know we don't have a lot of time, but there just has to be.
Well, then the family has to be at fault here too. I place some blame with them. They all, I know they all moved out of state, but they left their dad here with millions of dollars, and he was preyed upon. They didn't do their due diligence
Right.
to check and see who these folks they're dealing with.
Until the money was gone.
Did they check out the Better Business Bureau? Did they check out other folks? Although you don't need a license, which legislatively that needs to be corrected when
Right.
when it talks about the elderly. I thought that was just crazy.
Right.
Yeah, you know what? I'm going to look at it from a different
Quickly,
perspective.
quickly.
I think that what they wanted to say in this article, he got married without the family's knowledge, really without the family's permission. We don't know. This gentleman could have had the time of his life the last couple of years, and so I think that just the flip side is that he could have been a stubborn man and said, "I'm not listening to y'all. I love her. I'm about to go party. We're going to enjoy life, and I want to die broke." Possibly. So I don't think that it's, I think that we should, look at the side that obviously the rest of the panel is taking. But I think that the other side, I know people 80 years old who are like, I don't care what you say. This is what I'm going to do. So that possibly
Right.
could happen.
So they can be stubborn. I know. Now, two other quick topics because we only have about 4 minutes. First is the fact that the NFL has decided that if any of their players are in the first time they do a domestic violence situation, they will. There's a year.
A 1-year ban,
One-year
and then
ban.
and any time after that, because
And then if they do it again,
it's a
they're out the
lifetime
league.
ban, and I applaud that. I mean, the commissioner came out yesterday and said that he got it wrong because he only gave a game or 2 games to the
Two
one
games.
player, and he said after reading and listening and learning, he said he absolutely got it wrong. And so I applaud anyone who can hear a subject and then determine I did something incorrect.
And it's one of the few times that I will give the commissioner credit because his track record, with me at least, is not sterling. But on this issue, he got it right. And I think that players have to step up and be more responsible. And I think that goes beyond football and that payday. I think that this is just about character. So
Yeah,
It's not
social
sterling.
responsibility.
It's not-
Social responsibility because people look up to these players. My grandson is only 8 and he could tell you where these players were born. He could tell you a lot about them. He says, Grandma, LeBron is expecting a baby. I mean, he knows about all this stuff regardless of, it may be minutia to us, but they pay attention. And
Yeah.
I don't care. They may say, I'm
not
not a
a-
role model, but
they are.
They are.
They get paid
I
a
will
lot of
say,
money for
I
it.
commend them on this, period. What I don't want to see happen is now you have an issue where, they jumped the gun.
right.
And I'm not for sure what the article states or what he actually said. So I'll be, very much interested in what he actually said
Well,
and what that actually entails and means.
Well,
So.
the union said it will make sure that their
there's a
guys
fair
have due
treatment.
process and
Yeah.
stuff.
Right.
Quickly, Chris, tell us about your event.
Well, tomorrow, excitingly, Engine 40 Foundation is having its 16th annual Back to School Bash. And it's just a day out for the family. There'll be plenty of activities, rock climbing walls, extreme air, stilt walkers, face painting, horseback riding. I mean, you name it, it's there. Everyone who comes out that day, the food is on us, the drink is on us, soda and water, of course. But it's a day for the community to come together, and we kind of finish it up where our goal this year is to give out over 1,500 backpacks filled with school supplies. And not only that, we've got various speakers throughout the day that's going to talk about the role education played in their success. And we're going to have a lot of fun. So, we're excited that everyone has kind of reached
What
out to us.
time does it begin?
From 11 to 6, 13939 Dexter in Detroit, Michigan. Again, it's from 11
At
to 6.
Ewald Circle.
Yeah, it's right there at the firehouse on the corner of Dexter and Ewald Circle. Everyone is invited out. Please come out. We've got tons of stuff that we'd like to get in the students' hands. and we've just got a day full of fun activities. So come on out. It's supposed to be a nice hot day, and so we've got some stuff that'll keep you cool.
And we'll be going there. I'll be there.
I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, make sure this event is Sterling.
And we're going to have a station there that if people have challenged you in the ALS Ice Bucket Challenge, that you can, we're going to have a station for all the people who need to catch up with that. So if you got a little backlog with challenges, you can settle the score right there at the back to school event.
Well, that's great. August 30th.
August 30th, tomorrow. So.
Okay, everybody. It went by too fast, and I'm sorry we didn't get a chance to go more in depth with some of those topics because we could have. You know, we could talk. This is the fastest hour in the world. Everyone, we'll see you next Friday right here. Be there.
Thank you.
Thank
Be
you.
here.
Take care.
Thank you, co-host.